Hey, good morning, kids. This is Ms Gutierrez. Today is day 4 of week 3 of at-home learning. Before we get started in our mini lesson today, I just wanted to briefly touch base with you guys on how to access the weekly notes. Because there is only one document that I place in there per week. Okay, so when you get to your Google Classroom, whether you are doing this online or on your computer, you're going to want to, it's always going to pop up to the stream. Always, always, always. Okay, that doesn't really help us because if you look here, everything is such a hot mess. It is just one big jumble of work and then maybe a couple announcements. If you all haven't watched these videos by Ms Suqua and Mr. Vidal, you all should check them out. Nice encouraging words. Okay, so I'm always going to hit my class work button. When I hit that button, it's going to take me to what should be more or less organized. I'm trying to keep it as organized as possible, guys. Doing this for 7 classes is a ton of work daily. But here we go. Okay, so all the topics are listed here. What I like to do normally, I don't even go by the topics this way because it'll give us the full assignment. I like to look for my topics or for my assignments based on the topic. So I scroll down to week 3, but I don't see anything about PowerPoints or slides. So as I scroll down more, you're going to see week 3 notes, causes of the American Revolution. Week 3 notes, causes of the American Revolution. When you open this up, this week I went ahead and uploaded a PDF. That way you can access it from any kind of computer or your phone. And this is going to be all of our notes laid out all together. And today we are on day 4. This is the last day of the week since we have the Easter holiday coming up. Okay, so we're going to continue. Okay, so here I have my notes set up on my Google Doc. I have my title, day 4, causes of the AR notes. I have my subtitle, colonist reaction. Okay, we're going to take a look here. We know that as of the end of the French and Indian War, the British began implementing these taxes, and they did so without any of the colonists having representation in Parliament or their form of legislation, like kind of what we have with our Senate and our House of Representatives today. So the colonists began to react. Just like anybody who has been treated poorly or unfairly, you're going to react. You're going to want to do something. And that's how the colonists were feeling. So not only were they reacting, they were also reacting out of anger and out of frustration. So let's take a look at our slide here. The colonists were furious with these taxes because they were being taxed without having any vote in the British government. Okay, so real quick, all we have to type is colonists were angry or furious about taxes being passed without their permission. You might say, wait, the government does a lot without our permission daily. I mean, there's been a lot going on in the news that Senate's been passing. So why do the colonists feel this way? Well, that's because your parents and anybody above the age of 18 has the ability to vote those people into office. The colonists had no representation whatsoever in their legislative body. Okay, next thing, the colonists began to cry out something that went like this: no taxation without representation, because they believed in the consent of the governed, which is something that British law had already taught them. And since they were British citizens, they felt that they also should have the ability to have a voice, which, I think is pretty fair. So colonists chat. No taxation without representation. And they were very upset because they had no consent. There was no consent to pass those taxes. There was no representative to speak up for the colonists in the parliamentary houses. So these colonists were getting pretty ticked off. Okay, let's move on to the next bullet. So as these colonists were getting riled up, you're always going to have one person who's going to, be a little bit extra. And this person's name is Samuel Adams. And he formed the Sons of Liberty in Boston. Boston at the time was a very flourishing city because it had a port. And port cities are meant for trade, right? We remember that from the first 6 weeks. So Sam Adams forms the Sons of Liberty, and he takes his people in his group, men, of course. Women did not partake in many protests. And he began to decide that they were going to boycott taxes or they were going to protest taxes by boycotting British goods. And this is where the smuggling really begins to pick up, because if you're not buying goods from your home country, then you're illegally buying them from somewhere else. And things like molasses or things like sugar becomes taking it from a different country becomes a criminal act. Okay, so we're going to say Samuel Adams formed the Sons of Liberty, and we capitalize it because that is the formal name of their group, of their organization, I guess. Okay, and it happened in Boston, but we don't need to know that because we know about the Boston Tea Party. And they protested by boycotted. So they boycotted. Okay, so when colonists began to react to the taxes, they got angry. They said that this was no taxation without representation. They didn't want that, and that they did not give any consent to the British Crown or Parliament to tax them because they have nobody elected from their colonies. And then, of course, you have a couple of shining stars like Samuel Adams, who forms the Sons of Liberty, and they end up boycotting British goods. For my picture, I went ahead and I inserted a picture of the Sons of Liberty during the Boston Tea Party. And even though we're not quite there yet, it kind of reminds me of how upset the colonists were and how willing they were to put their freedom on the line simply to prove a point that what they were experiencing was unfair. We're going to go ahead and move on to our next slide, which is the Boston Massacre. Now, this etching here, it's not actually a painting, it's an etching. And what that means is that the artist, who was Paul Revere, who later became a very important figure during the American Revolution, he went ahead and engraved this into metal. And what he did was you could put paint on top of it and then use it like a stamp, kind of, to stamp it onto a parchment. So this is called an etching. And etching means to kind of carve into things, little carvings. And so there's a lot of detail in this. But what I love about it is that this little dog right here kind of represents how this was an ordinary day in Boston until all hell broke loose. Okay, we're going to continue with our notes. So the first one says, in 1770, British troops and colonists in Boston, Massachusetts, got into a fight in which 5 colonists were killed. And we talked about the 555. It happened on May 5th. 5 colonists died, right? Okay, so what we're going to write here is 1770. That's an important date, and the reason we want to remember this date, or at least the roundabout of when it was, is because it's right on the cusp of the revolution starting. So it's kind of reminding us of all the things that are happening right before the revolution. Okay, so British troops opened fire on colonists, And the colonists were actually not innocent themselves. They were throwing stones. But you have stones and snowballs compared to muskets and bullets. There's no fair fight there. So the British troops opened fire on colonists, killing five. Okay, killing five of them. So it was a very tragic experience for the colonists. This would be the equivalent of our government attacking our own citizens. These people were British people, and they're being attacked by British soldiers. So this really caused a ruckus in the colonies as the word spread. Now, word didn't spread the way that it does today. We can quickly post something on Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or whatever platform it is that you use. But back then, it was by word of mouth. It was not even by telegraph because that wasn't invented. It was by newspapers and letters that would take a really long time to get delivered. But as the word spread, colonists were angered, and not only were they angered, they were astonished that the British Crown would allow this, and they also kind of lived in fear. I mean, at any point, your own government could attack you because you threw a snowball at a British troop. Okay, next one. The event was engraved, an etching, by Paul Revere and used as propaganda. Ooh, that's a good word. Propaganda kind of means a way to convince people, usually by some form of media. Today we see a lot of propaganda in YouTube with people providing their opinions and trying to sway yours to theirs. Okay. Um, you see a lot of propaganda during election time when different people running for office start putting out smear ads about the other opponents, things that they've done in the past. So that's propaganda. Okay, and the whole point was to get more colonists to hate the British. So here we go. Paul Revere creates an etching of the event as propaganda. We know that Paul Revere, if you didn't know, Paul Revere was part of the Sons of Liberty. So we know that he's not creating this etching to be in favor of the British crown. He's doing it to rile up the colonists so that way they can go ahead and declare their independence. Now, something that had not been put into the picture for various reasons was the first person who died. The first person also happened to be African American. At the time, I'm sure he was either an escaped slave or a former slave, and his name was Crispus Attucks. He was one of the first, actually, he was the first of the five colonists to be killed. And in class, I know we talk about him as Crispy because they shot him to a crisp. That's how we remember it. And yes, it's very graphic and insensitive, but it helps us remember who Crispus Attucks was. Okay, so Crispus Attucks was the first killed in the Boston Massacre. And the first African American killed for the cause, and the cause being the cause for freedom. Okay. Now, we talked about this in the past in class. I think one of the questions that I asked you guys was, why do you think it was that Paul Revere, knowing that Crispus Attucks was the first to die, why do you think it was he left him out? So that's something to think about at home. Shoot me an answer. Tell me what you think. Okay, for this picture, I did go ahead and put in a copy of the etching by Paul Revere. I just love this piece of artwork. I think it's so detailed, and it's a really good depiction of a historic event. A little dramatic, but still a good depiction. Okay, so for the Boston Massacre, we learned that the British troops opened fire, killing five colonists. The first colonist to pass away was Crispus Attucks, who was also the first African American to die for the cause. for freedom. And after this is all said and done, Paul Revere creates this etching. The whole point of this etching is so that it is sent out to multiple people, multiple cities, so that the colonists will jump on the bandwagon of wanting their freedom and understanding how harmful the British crown could be to them. Okay, kids, thank you so much for doing your notes with me. I hope you guys are still continuing to learn at home. Please let me know if you have any questions. I cannot say how proud of you I continue to be. I'm so proud that my students already know what to do, that they're completing their work. We're so fine-tuned and we just know what to do coming out of school. And I'm so proud, and you guys make my job easy because of that. Hey, parents, if you're listening, I just want you to know I appreciate you all. I thank you all so much for helping out your students. I've received so many calls, text, phone calls with pictures of work, with parents wanting to make sure that their kids are doing their work, and I am very thankful for that. You all stay safe. I'm continuing to pray for you. Take care. Bye.